class of '93, is the president of the Gilman Alumni Association. A 12-year man who came to Gilman in first grade. An accomplished wrestler at Gilman, he graduated from the University of Virginia, where he continued his wrestling career. Today, he's an investment and insurance planner at the Franklin Financial Group and works with fellow Gilman alums, Haswell Jr., James, William, Henry, and their father, Haswell Sr. Very active in his church, Latter-day Ministries, Gerard married his wife, Michelle, in 2011. We are very fortunate that Mr. Harrison could take time out of his busy schedule to join us today. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
Jordan, thank you for the warm introduction. I simply count it a privilege and an honor to stand before former teachers, former coaches, friends, those that I don't know too well, and those I look forward to introducing myself to. About 27 years ago, this month, Coach Foreman reached out to me and said, as a fifth grader, Gerard, would you say the Dr. Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech? And that didn't bother me because my mom made me memorize it as a third grader. I was just surprised that he knew that I knew the speech. It was a different time, a different era back then, whereby Dr. King's birthday was the birthday of a civil rights leader. It was a different time whereby a lot of emphasis was on Black History Month. Political climate was a little different 27 years ago. But if we were to fast forward today, 27 years later, it's a lot different, whereby Dr. King's birthday is considered a national holiday. We see that the day of service, a time of remembrance. Lots of things have been changed since I last spoke in front of Gilman on this time. The only thing I say consistent is the fact that Coach Foreman asked me to speak in front of Gilman. Now, in this political climate, political correctness is very important. And there's a buzzword. The buzzword is tolerance. Everything is predicated upon tolerance. You can't be intolerant. Tolerance is the word that everyone speaks of right now. However, ladies and gentlemen, boys, I have a problem with tolerance. Let me step back. I have a problem with people leading with tolerance. Go with me for a moment. I know you're wondering, Mr. Harrison, where are you going with this? I have a problem with people lead with tolerance. For instance, if you go to a party, if you go out to some function, and you see there's injustice going on, some violations happening, do you say, I'm going to be tolerant? Or, how about this? If I'm being intolerant, how come you're not tolerating my intolerance? So there's a problem that I have with leading with tolerance. Well, what do you lead with? You lead with conviction. You lead with the values. You lead with the morals. You lead with conviction. Now, where are my lower schools? Raise your hand, lower schools. Excellent. Keep your hands up. Put both hands up. Everybody put their hands up for just one moment. Now put your hands right here. This is where conviction comes from. Right here. That feeling when something is right to move. When something is wrong to move. This is where conviction resonates. Now some of us have a little more conviction than others, but that's what New Year's resolutions are for. But it's conviction. Right here. This is where it starts. The problem that we have now is that if you have conviction, a lot of people say, well, you're a legalist, your standards are too high. If you have lots of conviction, then you never compromise. And if you never compromise, then you can't be compassionate. So we have this alliteration of C. We have conviction, we have compromise, and we have compassion. How do these things work? Do they work together? Well, yes they do. I like to take the words of Pastor Rick Warren when he said, you don't have to compromise your convictions to be compassionate. I say it again. You don't have to compromise your convictions to be compassionate. Well, how do you do that? You have convictions, you can't compromise. How do you express compassion when you have all this conviction? Well, there's an answer. And the best example was what we saw with Dr. King. Oh, yes, he had convictions. He had convictions because he wasn't just Dr. King, he was Reverend Dr. King. Meaning that he followed the Bible, he followed the gospel of Jesus Christ, so he had convictions that he could not compromise, but everyone would agree with me, he was full of compassion. How was he able to have conviction? How was he able to not compromise? And how did he still have compassion? This is what he did. And this is the example that we want. He was able to separate the act from the perpetrator. Parents do it every day. They say, you did something wrong. It's what you did, but it's not who you are. He was able to separate what someone did against who they were. And that's why he's able to share the compassion. He could separate the two. There's something that someone did, but it's not who they are. And that gap between who you are and what you did is where compassion comes in and fills the gap. Another word for compassion is just simply love. If you can separate the two, then you'll have that gap filled with love. Parents do it all the time. They tell you you did something wrong. It's what you did, but it's not who you are. So what we have now at this juncture is a dilemma of compromising, conviction, compassion. How does it all work together? The way I want you to stand and remember this conversation today is with two things. One, you don't have to compromise your convictions in order to be compassionate. It can work together. And two, learn to separate the act from the perpetrator. That's where it is. Gentlemen, ladies, don't compromise your conviction. That's the legacy that Dr. King really left. Oh, sure, tolerance is important, but you can't compromise your convictions. And yes, you can still be compassionate. As I close, you may not ever remember me. I may not get the opportunity to meet you. I certainly love to have that opportunity. But just remember those things. You can't compromise what's right. It's easy at Gilman because of the Gilman 5. You can't compromise your convictions. And yes, you can still be compassionate. And one of the things that Dr. King said that talked about conviction without saying it directly is something that I want to leave you with. He said, and I quote, I agree with Dante that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in a period of moral crisis, maintain their neutrality. Gentlemen, conviction is what you have. Don't compromise it, and yet you can still be compassionate. Thank you.